Guys, a lot of things are down right now. Not so much cryptos, but the stock market is down, and it could impact AI cryptos. Now, by the stream last time that part of the reason that AI is the stock market is down is because of weak manufacturing numbers, but that's not the whole story. Especially on this NASDAQ and tech stocks, they're down because the federal government, good old Uncle Sam, has decided to issue a subpoena to NVIDIA for monopolistic prices. Now, we don't like this, but Uncle Sam might actually have a point. They're accusing NVIDIA, much like Google, of using their dominant position in the market to force other chip makers to buy exclusively from them. Now, you're saying, why would you use any other graphic chip besides NVIDIA? Well, like in the top end, you generally wouldn't. You would only use NVIDIA because, let's face it, their chips are easily the best. However, in the lower end, that's when you start to see some AMD chips, even some Intel chips as well. Now, Intel is integrated for the most part. They do make a few dedicated chips, but it's for the most part integrated. So that's not where the problem is. The problem is if NVIDIA is using their dominant position in the market to force other suppliers to solely use NVIDIA chips, even in their lower end market, thereby pricing out competitors like AMD. Now, AMD can't compete with NVIDIA in top-end graphic chips, but not everyone is going to buy a top-end laptop with a top-end graphics chips because, it's expensive. So if you look at graphics cards, maybe in the lower sections of kind of the price market, you're looking at laptops that are maybe only, $1,000 or something, you might see a cheaper AMD graphics chip, a dedicated chip in there instead of an NVIDIA one. And if NVIDIA is trying to use their bully tactics to actually bully suppliers out of that contract with AMD, that would be considered a monopolistic practice. So the government could put the clamps on NVIDIA. Now, I don't think they'll threaten to break up NVIDIA like Google because they can't really break up NVIDIA, but they might issue some fines and tell NVIDIA to stop doing that. And that's why NVIDIA stock lost so much money today because of a subpoena. They also issued subpoenas to companies that NVIDIA is actually going to work with to get more information. Now, why would this affect AI crypto? Because AI cryptos have tried as hard as possible, literally as hard as possible, to tie themselves to, you guessed it, NVIDIA, because that's just been such a huge boon for them recently. Because NVIDIA has been going up, 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 and they try to want to cling on to that, especially coins like NEAR and maybe RNDR and others. They want to associate themselves with NVIDIA as much as possible, but that could actually backfire in a case like this where NVIDIA is being sued by the government, because if NVIDIA goes down, if you're associated with NVIDIA, your crypto might go down as well. Now, I think that's complete nonsense because I don't think any of these cryptos are really tied to NVIDIA. I don't know how much NVIDIA actually uses any of those cryptos. And even I don't think the lawsuit's really going to affect these cryptos anyways, but because you associate yourself so closely with NVIDIA, it is going to hurt you. Let's just be honest. That's just how it is right now. You tied yourself really, really close to a big company, and that big company's up or downs is going to actually hamper or hurt your future. And of course, if they do very well, it's going to help your future. So it's kind of like a 50-50 kind of give and take type of thing. You kind of made your own grave. Now you got to sleep in it. I'm not really against that. I'm not really for that. It's just how it is. So AI cryptos, especially some of the ones that have tied themselves closer to NVIDIA, if they actually start going down at least a little bit because of this NVIDIA news, I wouldn't be all that afraid. I wouldn't really all be that worried because I think it's more of a superficial thing than a real thing where they're actually affected. Now, the other thing is, I do think NVIDIA and the stock market are actually going to recover tomorrow. The weak manufacturing numbers, that might linger for a while, but the NVIDIA thing probably will blow over pretty fast. It is a subpoena. They're not actually suing NVIDIA yet. They're just looking for information. And it'll probably be a while before we see developments in this. So at least in the meantime, that we can actually recover from this specific information. But if you see AI cryptos are doing a little worse than the market overall over the next week or two, this is probably the reason why, because a lot of them have tried to glue themselves to NVIDIA, and that might be coming back to bite them right now. The other thing I want to talk about is Ripple is getting smart contracts. Yes, after being 5 years late, they're finally getting smart contracts. Now, will this help them? I do believe it will help them. They're finally catching up with everyone else. I do think they've realized that their main tactic of cross-border, dominating the cross-border market is just not going to work. I mean, stable coins, for the ones that are actually using crypto, stable coins have already taken over that market, first of all. And I don't think there's much of a market left for Ripple. They might get some of the very illiquid markets, but that's never going to push their price up at this point. They did win the lawsuit, but they still really can't use XRP with ODL without registering it as a security, because remember, institutional sales are actually securities. So it's still kind of like up in the air, kind of like what's going on with that. And it's not really a great situation, and that probably won't be resolved anytime soon. So because like the courts have already ruled that secondary markets aren't securities or primary markets are securities, and if the SEC doesn't appeal it, I don't think Ripple will actually appeal it. And since they're not going to appeal itself, it's going to remain that secondary markets are indeed, primary markets are indeed securities. And, that's kind of like forced them to use USDT on ODL in the United States. And they might just end up doing that, or like USDC or something, or their Ripple stablecoin for the rest of their markets as well, because that would actually make the most sense. Which leads us to, hey, we don't have an ecosystem. We don't have a community. What do we need for that? We need smart contracts. Yeah, we got third-party smart contracts, but those are like not native smart contracts, so we need native smart contracts. Yes, I think they're finally admitting we made a huge mistake basically canceling Codius years and years ago and let everyone else get the jump on us, and they have big ecosystems now, but we're probably going to revive it. Now, it's not going to come until 2025, and it's only going to come on the EVM sidechain then. They do have some plans about like bringing it onto the XRPL main chain, but we don't really know when that timeline is, whereas everyone else already has smart contracts on their main chain. I've also heard some things that it does impact performance on XRPL overall if they bring smart contracts to XRPL. I'm not really sure how true that is, because XRPL has never had native smart contracts. No, Flare isn't an XRP smart contract. It's a third-party smart contract, and that's just not as good as a native smart contract. So XRP, that's what they're actually planning. Now, how much it will actually affect XRP? I think just getting smart contracts will give them a bit of a boost, even though if it's going to be in 2025. So I think it's probably going to be like March 2025. That's my guess for the EVM sidechain. And the main chain might not come until later in 2025 or even 2026. So they're still going to be way, way behind as everyone else is actually building. It's unlikely to me that they're going to really compete with like Solana and the others until they get the engine really going. And I think it really depends on how much the parent company actually supports the smart contract stuff. If Ripple is still hell-bent on cross-border transaction, dominating the cross-border market, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, because you need the parent company's support. You need the parent company's promotion for this stuff to work. Look at how much Solana has spent on promoting its ecosystem. Look at how much Ton is doing to promote their ecosystem with like Hamster Combat and all that stuff. And like those are the ones that are going to be successful. Same thing with Tron. Justin Sun's pumping it, but it is Justin Sun, so that's kind of like another case altogether. BNB's pumping it, and like BNB's highly supported their ecosystem and financially as well. And they're really supporting like the integration of like DEXs, even meme coins, and that's why their ecosystem is huge. So every one of these ecosystems that are huge, it has massive, massive support from the parent project. So you've got to be focused on third-party adoption, and that's where I had my doubts, because XRP's never, like Ripple's never really cared that much about third-party adoption. It's always been like laser focused on like cross-border payments. But I think since that's like not really working all that well for them after so many years, and there's like legal hurdles, they have to focus on something else right now, because they can't just like bleed out completely while they're actually dumping on retail users. They have to like make the price go up somehow sooner or later. And I do think they realize that if they don't make the price go up this bull run, a lot of people are going to lose hope and are going to lose interest, because they already missed one bull run. And now since the lawsuit is over, you can't really borrow the excuse that, hey, it's the lawsuit keeping us down right now. So realistically, like I think like this is one of their last opportunities to actually make a play for this, and they do actually need to make this DeFi thing work. How much will it work or not work? I don't really know. I personally give it like maybe like a 40% chance of actually pulling this off and like rising really big because of their smart contracts. Because one, it's because of the timing. You're already behind everyone else, and you have to do this before the real bull run hits. And if you're not going to get the EVM sidechain stuff in before like March or April 2025, you might not have enough time to develop before the bull run actually comes. And especially on your main chain, if you're not going to do that until like 2026, you might actually miss the bull run altogether and people just might migrate to other coins. It does take a while for that ecosystem to actually kick up. And also, the company has to support it. And I'm not really sure how much money and financial resources Ripple itself is going to be willing to pour behind this initiative. And the company has to be willing to pour behind this initiative for this initiative to actually work. At least that's my opinion. So we'll see how they pull this off or how they don't pull this off. It's still very, very much up in the air right now. But at least now, since they're doing these smart contracts, they do actually have a shot of joining this market. Whereas like without smart contracts before, they didn't have any shot of joining this market because their AMM was just simply not working at all. So in terms of like getting traction, it's got like 12 million XRP, I believe, last time I checked. And that's roughly like, I would say like not even $10 million locked. And it's been there for half a year. So it's really not growing. People really aren't interested in it. So they have to get native smart contracts in for XRP. So looking at the financial markets today, yes, like we mentioned, the two factors coming in to actually impact the market. Realistically, it's the NVIDIA investigation. That's what's got the tech stock and the tech sector down. And it's also the manufacturing reports. I think the manufacturing reports might actually help crypto in the long run because it actually might get Powell to cut rates faster. Now, a 50 basis point cut might actually induce some panic. So I don't want him to do that, but like he's going to do 25. But I think like the weak numbers, what it's going to do is not induce him to do a 50-point cut this time, but it's going to induce him to do consecutive 25-point cuts because the numbers really aren't catastrophic. They're just not as strong as they were last year. It's like numbers still point to like small expansion in manufacturing, but not the expansion that people were actually hoping for. So I think that's going to scare a couple of investors, but I think if he does a 50 basis point cut, I think more people are going to be scared, and that's not Jerome Powell's goal. And the NASDAQ thing is being most affected by NVIDIA. I do think that will actually bounce back for after a while. I also think inflation is going to be pared down at this point because oil prices are actually dropping. You look at worldwide oil, it's like 70.36. It's almost the 60s. And if that continues to actually drop more, oil prices come down, inflationary pressures will come down too. And if that's the case, then inflation is definitely going to come down. Then there is basically no reason for them not to cut rates. So I think the macro factors are actually, as long as things just don't drop off the bottom, I think the macro factors are definitely going to favor crypto. And I think the stock market's actually going to do okay as well. I think the manufacturing thing is being overblown. Basically, it was off by 0.7%, which isn't really that much. I think the projected was 47.9 and we were at 47.2 or something. And as long as we're above 42.7, we were expanding. So we're still expanding on the manufacturing, just not by as much as they expected, but it was only off by 0.7, which is why I think today's major drop, as you can tell by the NASDAQ futures right now, was actually based on the NVIDIA thing. Because NVIDIA has been super, super hot. Recently, they only grew by about 150%, rather than 250% like they did last year. So maybe people got a little bit of cold feet about that, but they were still expanding. But now this government lawsuit actually might put a hoax on the whole thing of them expanding more than ever. So we're going to have to see how this subpoena turns out and what the government is going to nail them for, if the government is going to nail them for anything at all. And I think that will actually have a pretty big effect on the AI market and as the market as a whole. The government has actually been doing a lot of the anti-monopoly stuff. Some people like it, some people don't. It really depends which side of the aisle you're from and what you see about this. I definitely think Google was doing some monopolistic practices. I think NVIDIA might be doing some monopolistic practices with regards to AMD and competition. But overall, I do think their stock's going to recover. I think AI is still going to be really hot in the bull run. And I'm not really worried about this in the long term. Because even if AI doesn't do quite as well, which I don't think is going to be the case, other cryptos will still do really, really well once the bull run comes. Because the economic factors are pointing to consecutive rate cuts. It's consecutive rate cuts of 25 basis points. And that's basically exactly what we need because that will not induce any panic, but that is just giving the financial analysts and the people exactly what they want, which is slow, steady rate cuts, but not to induce panic, but getting the interest rate down where people can have access to easy money, where some of that money will come out of bond markets and money market and into the stock market or the crypto market. I know some of it's going to the reverse repo market at this point, but I think like as the rates come down even more, it'll come out of that market and come into more risk markets. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.